Child labor was a major conflict in the industrialization period of the 1800s that caused severe injury and even death to many children. This issue was ultimately solved with the use of compromise between lawmakers and business owners. In the late 19th century, America began industrializing rapidly. New industries emerged and people migrated towards these big cities looking for work and new businesses such as mines, factories, and mills. While there was an abundance of citizens offering their service, even in terrible conditions, many business owners looked towards children to complete their hard labor. To shortly summarize child labor, it is the use of children in industry or business, especially when illegal or considered inhumane. Children during this very difficult time period would work for up to 16 hours a day for as little as a quarter a week. Business owners had a preference towards children because they could be easily controlled and paid much less, but these hard-working children were often abused by their bosses, shut into windowless buildings, and injured by machinery or other causes. While child labor overall is a saddening concept, the details are even more unsettling. Each different location that these children worked in brought their own risks and dangers. To start, children working in factories often lost body parts from working with heavy machinery. Lung disease was often caused from breathing in dirty air. Deformities were also common, since these children would stay in the same position for hours at a time. Types of mills, such as the ones that produced mass clothing, also brought great risk. Respiratory disease from breathing inlet was common among the working children, which was extremely deadly. Those working in the mines were at some of the greatest risk. As seen from the photos, these children, often called breaker boys, were sent to very dangerous locations, as young as 5 years old, to work from dawn until nighttime. These children were often forced to chew tobacco to prevent from swallowing the coal dust which surrounded them. Child labor grew rapidly for many reasons. By 1900, 18% of all American workers were under the age of 16. Due to this, it took the United States many years to outlaw child labor for good. While there had been restrictions and unions against child labor in the 19th century, more effective means of ending child labor weren't put into place until after 1900. The first steps to ending child labor were taken when the U.S. Congress attempted to pass two laws in 1918 and 1922, but ultimately these two laws were declared unconstitutional. The next step was taken in 1924, when Congress proposed a constitutional amendment prohibiting child labor, but again the states did not ratify it. The child labor reform benefited most after the Great Depression began. Children were taking up a large majority of the jobs which grown men and women really needed during that rough decade. Finally, in 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act was passed, which set forward a minimum age requirement for labor, a minimum wage, and a maximum number of hours one could work per week. Ultimately, the conflict of child labor was solved with the compromise of protective legislation. Before this compromise was formed between lawmakers and business owners, children as young as 5 often worked all day in terrible conditions for little to no pay, while afterwards there was a set age and pay requirement. America benefited greatly from this compromise formed from this conflict, and thanks to what we learned in the past, we now know how to avoid a situation like this ever reoccurring in our country.